What would be the excuse if we are taking care of them medically, if we're taking care of them and they have roads and they have everything from us? What would be the excuse of them coming in and murdering Jews in a synagogue? Or like in my family's home, they came in on Friday night and murdered them. My friend's family, they went into Itamar and they murdered the father, the mother, and then they went back to, even after they murdered two of the children, to murder the little infant 3 months old. So what would be the excuse for murder if they don't blame us for something? But I'm going to tell you a true story, because everything I'm saying is true and you can check it. We were called out in an emergency about a year and a half ago. We were called out in a lot of them. This was a special one. It was a van packed with Arab young men that wanted to find work inside of Israel. It was on what we call Simchat Torah, on the Festival of the Torah. I was called out with my beeper from the synagogue, got in the ambulance. I was the first ambulance there. Somebody had put 23 young Arab men that did not have permits to come into Israel in this van. They came down to the checkpoint with the army. They saw it. They turned around. The van turned over 3 times. I was the first ambulance. 2 were dead already when I got there, and 1 died. I couldn't save him, but I took 3 in my ambulance to Ein Karam Hospital in Jerusalem. One of them was a 23-and-a-half-year-old young man from an Arab, these are all Arabs, from Kalkilia, which is under the Palestinian Authority. From the accident, his right arm was cut off here, his left arm was cut off here. I was stabilizing him, and he says, "No," in Arabic, "No, let me die." And I said, "Mahmoud, what are you talking about? You have a family." He says, "Yes, I have 2 babies. But if I live, you're going to take me to the hospital in Jerusalem. You're going to save me. I go back to Kalkilia. I won't have work. Nobody will pay me anything. If I die here, I will be called a martyr and my family will be paid." I couldn't leave him in emergency in the hospital. I said, "No, you have to live. Let me call your family. Let me tell," and this was a holiday, and I'm religious. "Let me call them and tell them, you have to talk to them. You have to want to live." He said, "You don't understand. If I live, my family suffers. If I die, then they martyrize me and my family gets money." And this is what the world is ignoring. And I'm going to give you a copy of my latest blog. I have a blog on Israel National News in English about the payments for terrorists that are given by the United States and by the other countries. And the Palestinian Authority, heads of the Palestinian Authority, including President Abbas, goes through the file, and the more victims, Jewish victims, the more pain and the more suffering and the more horrible the terror attack, the more money the terrorist, or if he's dead, his family gets. Millions of dollars every year. And nobody talks about this because it's so much easier to say, well, if there wasn't Israeli conquest, why was my family murdered in the 1920s? Why was my family murdered in the 1930s in the Galilee? There was no state of Israel then. Why does an Arab want to come in and slaughter a family when they're sleeping in their homes or in a synagogue when they're praying? When only since we're here in our country as a state of Israel do they really have freedom of worship. Hebron, the Cave of the Patriarchs, which is really one of the most holy places aside from the Temple Mount, is open for the Arab prayer. There's mosques all over the place. But I'm not allowed to pray as a Jew? So they say, no, it's because they go up to the Temple Mount. But the Temple Mount didn't belong to Islam. The Temple Mount was bought by us, by our people in the time of the Bible, for the Jewish people, for a place to pray to God, the God of Israel. Do I mind them praying there? No, but don't forbid me to go up there and pray because it's a Jewish monument. It's a Jewish place of prayer for the Lord of Israel. And that's what's so painful to me, that the world blinds itself to the truth and points an accusing finger even at our soldiers. One of my sons was injured going in after a terrorist near Hebron because the terrorists take innocent Arabs, hide behind them in their homes, knowing that the Israeli soldiers are not going to bomb like the Americans do. They're going to go in and they'll be able to kill or hurt the soldiers. So one of our sons was very badly injured going in after a terrorist who was hiding in a home near Hebron a few years ago. Thank God he's okay. But do they talk about this? How we are willing to expose ourselves to dangers to try and save innocent lives? No. The world ignores this. And then there's the United Nations, which should be closed because there's a special committee for acts against humanity. It's not convened about anybody except against Israel. But we have a saying that the eternal nation is not afraid of a long way. And we know that we're in the right way. And every morning when I pray the morning prayer, I put in money for charity and I speak to God that he blesses us, please, dear God, with leadership that protects his name, our Torah, our land, and our people, and that we be deserving to be messengers in his name. I always say it's like a mosaic. You know, each piece is different, but if they don't all fit together, you can't fix the mosaic. And that's what people are. Nobody is, even if you have the same recipe for a cake and you make it 100 times, sometimes it's different. And people are different, and we have to love one another. And that's why we chose this community. And we're very, very grateful to live here. And the historical importance, too, that my family, as I said, they were from Tzvat, from Safed, you call it in English. They came to Israel in the 1820s, to Safed. And I grew up on the stories of, and when I was little, many of my family had been murdered in the pogroms, you know, in the 1920s and 1930s. Then when the reporters came, when we first came here, because I do 3 different things. I do security, rescue, and I'm one of our spokespeople. And when the reporters came to ask, you know, well, this is so dangerous. How can you come here and you have a baby? And I said, let me tell you the story of my great-grandfather, Rabbi Levi. Many of our family and many of the people in Tzvat, in Tiberias, in Hebron, and in Jerusalem were murdered in the 20s. Why? There was a state of Israel? No. But because we were Jewish, our neighbors murdered us, which we see today all over the world. And the people of Tzvat, Safed in Hebrew Tzvat, came to the 3 rabbis. One of them was my great-grandfather, Rabbi Levi, and they said, please, let's move from Tzvat, from the Galilee, to Hebron where it's safer. And he said, no, we will teach those who hate us that we are here to stay. And I said to the reporters back then, this is 34 years ago, we were living in a little caravan, 34 square meters with no water, electricity. And I said, do you realize I was born after the state of Israel? I am a commander in the Israeli army. I can fight for my country. My children were able to fight for their country because we have a country here, and not only for us is it important. It's important not only for Jews all over the world, but for those who believe in freedom of worship and freedom of life. And that's what we believe in. And we could have thrown all the Arabs out when we established the state, but no. I said, even today, back then, I said, you know, our neighbors from the Arab villages come here when we get water, and they take water, and it's fine. And to respect human life is very, very important. And thank God we're able to do that.